A wildlife biologist joins a remote Arctic research outpost after her partner disappears under mysterious circumstances. When a massive white polar bear starts circling the station, she sedates it to collect samples and discovers her partner's missing GPS tracker inside its stomach. As storm warnings cut off all communication, she realizes the bear may not have killed him. It may have swallowed something trying to escape. What she finds in the ice turns the investigation into something far darker than a wildlife incident. Dr. Lena Morin stepped off the last supply chopper and into the freezing silence of Arctic Echo Station. The wind cut across the open snowfield like a blade, but she didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on the low steel structures half buried in snow. She didn't come here to sightsee. Her partner, Ethan Keene, had vanished from this exact outpost 2 weeks ago. The official report claimed he fell through the ice during a routine tagging mission. But Lena had studied the raw GPS data. Ethan's last signal didn't come from a melt zone or a thin shelf. It came from a patch of stable ground 6 miles inland. No water, no cracks, just an empty signal and silence. The head of the outpost, Dr. Wexler, greeted her with the usual cold protocol. No apologies, no answers, just a warning to follow protocol and stay inside during whiteouts. Lena nodded but said nothing. She was already studying the movement logs. Drone flights, satellite pings, temperature anomalies. One thing stood out. In the days after Ethan disappeared, motion sensors kept triggering around the same grid sector. Sector 9. Always at night. Always near the ridge. That evening, she checked the data again. A large, warm mass, nearly 600 kilograms, had been moving in erratic loops. Too slow for a vehicle. Too precise for wind drift. Only one explanation made sense. A polar bear. A big one. Probably female. Possibly denning nearby. She asked Wexler why no one followed up. He brushed it off. They didn't have the manpower. They weren't wildlife enforcement. It was just a bear. At midnight, she loaded the Tranquilizer rifle, checked the dart dosage twice, and joined the next snowmobile patrol. She said nothing to the others. No theories, no accusations, just eyes on the dark horizon. The cold was blinding. Snow tore sideways across their visors. Then a flash. A large shape near the ice ridge. Moving slow. Watching. Not running. Lena lifted the rifle. Lined up the shot. Her breath froze at the muzzle. She squeezed the trigger. The dart hit. The animal stumbled, roared once, and vanished behind the ridge. The team approached cautiously. They found her 20 minutes later, slumped and breathing heavy. Lena stood over the sedated white bear, heart pounding. She didn't feel triumph. She felt dread. Something about the bear's eyes unsettled her. It didn't look like an animal that had attacked. It looked like one that had seen too much. The sedated polar bear was too large for the snowmobile trailer. They had to call in the tracked hauler from base. The animal's weight pushed past 600 kilograms. Female, fully grown, no visible wounds. The dart had landed just above the left shoulder and held. Her breathing was steady but slow. Lena supervised the loading in silence. The others made small talk, nervous jokes, the usual tension breakers when facing a live apex predator. She didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the bear's jaw. Something was wrong. A slight swelling near the side of the mouth. Scar tissue. Possibly an old injury. Possibly something more. Back at the mobile lab unit, Lena took charge of the intake. She ordered a full scan, including stomach contents. Wexler objected. Said it wasn't standard. Said they didn't have capacity. She didn't argue. She just pulled rank and began the procedure. The bear was still sedated, masked, strapped. The internal imaging was slow. The first scan revealed nothing unusual. Fish bones, seal tissue, some synthetic fragments, plastic netting. Lena cataloged it all. Then the second scan passed over the upper digestive tract, a dense metallic object, about 5 centimeters wide, uneven, not natural. She halted the scan, switched to manual extraction, gloves on, incision made. The smell hit instantly. Seal fat, acid, rot. She pushed through carefully. There it was, a chunk of synthetic rubber fused with metal, jagged, burned. She rinsed it under the sink. The lab assistant leaned in and froze. There was a serial code engraved into the side. Lena scraped off the tissue. Beneath the grime, a scratched nameplate. Ethan Keene. It was his tracker. Issued 6 months ago. Prototype build. Only 2 existed. The other was still in her locker. The lab went dead silent. Wexler entered, saw the tag. His face drained. He asked no questions, just stared. Lena held the tag in her fist and walked out into the snow. Her breath cut the air in bursts. The bear lay still behind the insulated wall, still unconscious, still warm. She stared toward the ridge, toward the place Ethan had last pinged. The bear had been circling that area for days, not feeding, not nesting, returning. Over and over, as if searching or guarding. The tracker wasn't chewed. It was whole, as if swallowed deliberately. Lena didn't feel fear. She felt something worse. Context. Lena locked the tracker in a sample container and slid it into her field pack. She didn't sleep that night. The storm began just after midnight. Heavy winds buried the outpost doors in snowdrift. The satellite uplink dropped offline by 2 a.m. No weather reports, no outside contact. She sat alone in the lab and watched Ethan's old field recordings. Most were routine. Tags, ice samples, seal population counts. But one file stood out. No audio, just video. A handheld cam pointed at the ground. Ethan's boots. Then the camera slowly tilted up toward a wide frozen basin. In the distance, heat shimmered above the snow. Not from the sun. Lena paused the frame. The timestamp was from 2 days before he disappeared. She opened the last recorded coordinates from his tracker. It wasn't anywhere near their usual field routes. It pointed to the far edge of the glacier shelf. The old Soviet sector. Decommissioned decades ago. Nothing marked. No known tunnels. Just rumors. Ice acoustics in that area had always been strange. Sound carried wrong. Signals bounced. Lena accessed the seismic logs. 36 hours before Ethan vanished, the sensors recorded low-frequency vibrations underground. Repeating pulses. Uniform. Not natural. She searched archived maps. In 1974, the Soviets had mapped a subsurface tunnel grid beneath that exact ridge. Wexler didn't want to talk. He stood by the official report, called it speculation. He said polar bears were scavengers. Maybe Ethan had fallen into crevasse and the bear found him later. But the data didn't support that. The tracker wasn't torn, no teeth marks, no bite damage. The bear hadn't chewed it. It had carried it. Intact, inside its gut, as if something or someone made it ingest the tag, or worse. Ethan had tried to make sure the tag would be found. Lena spent the rest of the night cross-referencing movement patterns. The bear had returned to the same coordinates 7 times in 10 days. Always alone. Always just before dawn. She downloaded the sector map into her wrist unit. Packed light. Rope, beacon, headlamp, cutter. If the storm broke by morning, she would move. There was no confirmation Ethan was alive. No body either. Just a feeling, not hope. Instinct. If the bear was a warning, it meant someone still wanted her to see what he had found, or what had taken him. By dawn, the wind dropped just enough to move. Lena stepped out alone. The snow was waist-deep in some places. Visibility barely 20 meters. She followed her wrist unit through the white void. Each breath froze against her scarf. The cold wasn't just in her skin anymore. It was inside her bones. The tracker led her east toward the ridge. It took 2 hours to reach the edge of the basin. The land dipped into a shallow valley surrounded by broken ice slabs. She paused, scanned. No animal tracks, just wind patterns. But the bear had been here, many times. She circled the valley perimeter until her foot broke through a crust layer. She dropped to her knees, brushed away the snow. A hairline fracture in the ice widened into a shallow depression. Half hidden beneath drift, she saw metal, old, rusted, industrial. A circular hatch half encased in permafrost. No markings, no keypad, just a frozen wheel lock. She attached the cutter. The first blade snapped. The second worked. Metal groaned. Steam hissed. The lock cracked and the hatch tilted. She slipped inside feet first. It was warmer below. Stale air. Metallic. The tunnel was narrow, lined with faded insulation. A few emergency lamps still flickered. Soviet text on the walls. Water damage. Collapse signs. She moved slowly. Each step echoed. Somewhere behind the walls she heard something. Not pipes. Not wind. A hum. A pulse. She turned a corner and saw a door halfway open. Beyond it, a small control room, wires exposed, monitors dark. Ethan's headset lay broken on the floor, dried blood near the earpiece. She stepped closer. The walls were marked. Scratches. Not animal. Not claws. Human hands. Desperate. She followed the gouges to a panel ripped from the wall. Behind it, darkness. A vent. She shined her light inside. It went deep. Something had crawled in, or out. She turned back to the room. On the desk, a torn notebook. Ethan's handwriting. Only one legible page. 3 words. "It's not dead." Before she could react, the tunnel behind her echoed with movement. Slow, wet, dragging. She killed her light and pressed to the wall. Breathing shallow. Something passed the corridor. Heavy, rhythmic. Not the bear. Not human. Something else. When the sound faded, she moved. Fast. No more questions. She had what she came for. Proof. Ethan had found something buried, and now it was awake.